Hi, Wayne here with another video. In this video, I want to talk about Ezekiel 38 and Ezekiel 39. Ezekiel 38 and 39 is probably one of the most popular chapters in all Bible prophecies, one of the most talked about chapters, or group of chapters. It's also probably some of the most sensationalized chapters in all Bible prophecy. There's a lot of crazy theories out there about the chapter. A lot of people believe that the chapter is one of the next chapters to be fulfilled. A while back, I was going through my dad's stuff, and I encountered this track. I don't know when this track was from. It's entitled, Why Are All the Vultures? It's about Ezekiel 38 and 39. I guess it was probably written in the 1970s, because it makes references to the European Common Market. It makes references to the Soviet Union and the Late Great Planet Earth by Hannah Lindsey. It makes references to that, and the premise of the track is that Ezekiel 38 and Ezekiel 39 were imminent because the population of buzzards in Israel was rapidly increasing. So the author of the track called up this Jewish rabbi, and the Jewish rabbi said, oh, it's the sign that the end is coming. It's a sign. The chapter is about to be fulfilled, and this track cites all sorts of events that happened back then with the premise that Ezekiel 38 and 39 were imminent in its fulfillment. If you read this today, you'll just realize how ridiculous it all sounded based on the events they were citing. But you have writings like this today where people are just hyping certain current events and claiming that Ezekiel 38 and 39 are imminent. So now I want to talk about Ezekiel 38 and 39 in my own perspective. I believed at various points that Ezekiel 38 and 39 were end-time events that were going to happen perhaps at the midpoint of the tribulation, somewhere in the first half of the tribulation, or perhaps later in the tribulation. I was of that opinion, and there are different theories for Ezekiel 38 and 39. Some have it before the tribulation, some have it at the beginning, some have it in the middle, some have it at the end. So I decided that I would devote a lot of time and resources into studying Ezekiel 38, 39 as closely as I could to see if I could actually pinpoint when these chapters would be fulfilled. So I think it was back in 2010, 2011 where I started really digging in. And it took about 3 to 4 years of study of the chapters, closely going through all sorts of different theories and ideas. And the more I studied the chapter, the more sense I got that a lot of people's impressions of the chapter are just not correct. And it's not based on an opinion, it's based on scripture. So I have an article on my website here called, Is the Ezekiel 38-39 War on Israel Imminent? On my website, and I go into it and I talk about the different challenges of timing. What makes Ezekiel 38-39 even more difficult in its timing is that Revelation 20 mentions Gog and Magog. So why would Revelation 20 mention Gog and Magog when everyone thinks that the chapter is one of the next chapters to be fulfilled? That's one of the other issues I investigated in my studies. So as I studied it, so we have Ezekiel 38, 1 through 7, which mentions all the different nations. I will probably have another video in the future about the different nations that are involved in Ezekiel 38, Ezekiel 39. So we have Gog and Magog. And then Ezekiel 38 to 18 has the key details regarding Israel before the Gog and Magog war. And when you study the details closely, and you compare it with chapters around Ezekiel 38, like 37, 34, the more you study it, the more I believe you'll get the impression that chapter, Ezekiel 38 especially, is a millennial chapter. It's not a chapter that takes place just before the tribulation. It's more of a millennial chapter. And I go into a lot of the different details in Ezekiel 38, 8 through 18 in my article regarding that. So Israel dwelling safely just before the invasion. Some people's theories is that Israel will be dwelling safely as a result of the 7-year covenant with many, or as Isaiah 28 calls the covenant with death, that Israel's going to have this false sense of security that Antichrist will bring on. Well, if you go into like Ezekiel 34, you get this same sense of security, but the reason why there's security is because the Lord is protecting Israel. That the Lord is present. He's already made his name known to the Gentiles. That the Lord is present, and that's why Israel's dwelling safely. They have a good reason to dwell safely. They have the Lord who's protecting them. And he's already proven to the nations that he will protect Israel. And you also have that idea elsewhere, like in Jeremiah and Zechariah. And here I have the tables that go over the same idea as well. You even have it in Ezekiel 28 as well. And then Ezekiel 38:11, the land of unwalled villages and cities. So Israel right now has a lot of cities and towns that have walls. In Zechariah, you have the same description of Israel, where Israel has no walls, no security barriers. And the reason why Israel has no security barriers is because the Lord is dwelling with them. They're safe. It's the millennium. That's why Israel doesn't have barriers, security barriers, because the Lord is protecting Israel in the millennium. And you have the verse comparison here. And then the idea, the 7 years to burn weapons, which is one of the things that jumps out when you study Ezekiel 39. One of the theories about the invasion happening at the start of the millennium, at the start of the tribulation, and then Israel burns the weapons throughout the tribulation, that doesn't really make much sense to me, because Israel is going to be persecuted during the second half of the tribulation, during the Great Tribulation. They're going to face extreme persecution. I don't know how the people of Israel are going to be burning weapons as they're being persecuted. But if you think about Israel burning weapons at the start of the millennium, the first 7 years of the millennium, that kind of makes sense, because no one's going to be bothering them as they burn the weapons. And then I think the key detail regarding all this, what the placement of Ezekiel 38 especially, is this concept of the entire gathering of the people of Israel. So Ezekiel 38 describes the land of Israel where everybody has been gathered back to the land. Everybody has been gathered back. 100% gathering. Right now, Israel does not have 100% gathering. In fact, I have this article here from 2020. It talks about how 45% of the world Jewish population is living in Israel. So there's 55% that live outside of Israel right now. To get Ezekiel 38 conditions, you need 100% gathering. You do not have 100% gathering until after the events of Armageddon, when the Lord gathers the people of Israel scattered throughout the entire planet. And in fact, Ezekiel 39 mentions that after the destruction of Gog, later in the end times, you have then the gathering. So Ezekiel 39:25 says, "Now I will bring again the captivity of Jacob." And then in verse 27, when talks about the Lord gathering the people again from across the nations of the earth. And so you also have that repeated as well in Isaiah 11 and Isaiah 66 as well, where the nations are bringing the people back after the events of Ezekiel 39. So this gathering of the people of Israel will take place just before the start of the millennium. And you have this chart here of different verses where I have on my website where I highlight these different passages which confirm this. So you don't have the conditions in Ezekiel 38 where everyone's been gathered and dwelling safely until the millennium. So with that, the timing regarding Ezekiel 38 and 39, I think Ezekiel 39 is a late end time event. I would place it just around the time of Armageddon. You have this Ezekiel 39 event where you have all the nations coming against Israel. That's Ezekiel 30. That's just before Armageddon. That's Ezekiel 39. Ezekiel 38 is where I think it applies to the millennium. And that's where I think Revelation 20 comes in. I think Ezekiel 38 covers what's described in Revelation 20 best. That's where I think it applies. So I think Ezekiel 30 and 39 are an example where there's elements of prophecy that occurs at different points in time, which is not uncommon, like Jeremiah 50 and 51. You have a portion of Jeremiah 50 that applied back in the time of the Babylonians, and you have a part of Jeremiah 50 and 51 that applies to the future. Ezekiel 38 and 39 are similar, where they apply to one part of the future, and then they'll apply to a different part of the future. So I hope you found this video insightful. Just again, I think Ezekiel 38 especially is overhyped, over sensationalized. It's more of a millennium type of chapter. And if you just study the chapters around Ezekiel 38, you will really get that strong sense that, yeah, this is really a chapter more towards the millennium versus towards the start of the tribulation, the midpoint of tribulation, etc. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care. See you again soon.